Alex here with a high conflict child custody video on privacy versus transparency. This is a topic that for the most part I didn't have a very strong opinion on. And because of that, I sort of deferred to the statutes and court rules in Nevada that heavily favor privacy in domestic relations matters. And what I mean by that is child custody cases. So paternity actions, divorce actions involving children, abuse and neglect proceedings, termination of parental rights proceedings, anything like that is in Nevada considered a domestic relations matter. And I think it even includes a few oddball things like probate stuff and guardianship, stuff like that, that doesn't necessarily have to involve children. So I think that all 50 states have statutes and rules that allow privacy in domestic relations matters, but I'm not absolutely sure. In fact, if any of my viewers knows for sure that they're in a state that you actually cannot insist on privacy in your type of case, definitely post in the comments below. In Nevada, for the most part, what's covered in those statutes and court rules is the ability to seal certain papers and pleadings, the ability to seal entire cases, and the ability to remove people from the courtroom. I was going to say during certain hearings, but maybe it might be the case that people can be removed from any hearing. And there are, of course, some exceptions to who you can remove from a hearing. I covered that in the video, Closed Hearings. Take a look at that video if you want to know more. Typically, it's friends and family of a party that can't be removed, but I might be wrong. So that being said, I'm doing this video now because my opinion has changed, and I actually strongly favor transparency in the courtroom now after having seen a video on YouTube involving an interview by MacDonald of Judge Judy. I've mentioned in many of my previous videos and live streams that I use Judge Judy as an example of what not to expect. It has nothing personal against Judge Judy, but I think a lot of people see TV shows like The People's Court and Judge Judy, and they think that's what it's going to be like when they go to family court. And in Nevada, at least, family court proceedings are district court proceedings. They are formal lawsuits, and it is nothing like TV. You don't just walk in and start talking and get a judgment, a ruling, and that's it. It's a very multi-step process. It involves a whole lot of writing, a whole lot less talking than people think, at least until you get to the trial at the very end. For the most part, the bulk of the case is tremendous amounts of writing. Briefs, motions, discovery, the pleadings themselves, and there are quite a few hearings, but they're not really like hearings like you see on TV with Judge Judy where the judge makes a decision. There's a lot of housekeeping hearings like case management conferences, settlement conferences. There's mediations which aren't even in court. And so I always tell people, do not expect this. But in this particular interview, Judge Judy was talking about her experience as an actual judge, not a TV personality. She used to be the supervising family judge she was on the bench in Manhattan. And I don't want to go too much into her backstory. If anyone here is interested to see what Judge Judy has done as a family court judge, definitely look into that on your own. I think you'll be surprised. And from what I have seen, the type of family judge that Judge Judy was is the ideal judge. I strongly believe that every judge in Nevada that's in the family division, if they followed her example, we would have an amazing family court system in Nevada. And again, I don't want to go too much into it now, but I've talked a lot in my previous videos how being nice as a judge and focusing a lot on the parents, I could talk about this in the video, best interest of the parents, is actually damaging to the child. And Judge Judy's no-nonsense approach, the way she deals with attorneys, it's really what family judges should ultimately come to. And I think some of the judges in Nevada have come to that. After they have enough experience, several decades worth of experience, they sort of start to see that that's what the kids need. The kids need that kind of attitude with respect to how the court interacts with the parents, how the court interacts with their attorneys, and what the court focuses on, even if it takes being a little mean, being the bad guy, and having to call people out. So anyway, with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop because I do want my viewers to go ahead and look into Judge Judy on their own if they're interested in seeing the work that she's done while being a presiding family judge in Manhattan, specifically how she shook things up being the supervising judge. She really did make a lot of enemies out of many of her colleagues, and it's just an amazing attitude and amazing approach of an actual judge to take, especially in the family court system. So with that being said, before I go into why Judge Judy changed my mind by me watching this video, I'm going to actually play the video and sort of let her speak for herself. And so with that, let's take a look.
And I really felt that the family court was a place that should be open to the press.
Yes.
Because at that time in New York, and probably in a lot of other places, it was sort of the dumping ground for morons and political hacks. People who had gone around and collected signatures for politicians to get on the ballot, they say, you know, we owe them a favor.
Yeah.
And where are we going to put them? We can't put them in the civil court or the Supreme Court because press goes in there to report. So we have to put them in a place where nobody can see the morons that we're pointing to the court. And it was frightening to see the mentality of people who were impacting on the lives of families and children.
The judges.
The judges. So I thought it was a great idea to have cameras in the courtroom when I became a family court judge. Yeah, I didn't believe in excuses.
Yeah.
So when I had the opportunity to say to 60 Minutes, yes, you can come, or no, you can't, I said, if I allow cameras in my courtroom, perhaps that will open up the family courts so that people will be able to see what kind of justice is being delivered by this very expensive court system. I actually...
So having seen that snippet, I think most of my viewers are going to draw some validation from Judge Judy's all-out attack on the family court system and on the types of judges that end up in that system ruling over our lives. It's really scary to see this opinion come from an actual family court judge, because it really drives home the reality that some of the people, maybe even most of the people wearing those robes, are delivering justice or decisions in our cases that are not the right decisions at all. I already knew this because with my organization, Our Nevada Judges, I had begun to track the mistakes that these judges were making, and compared to the non-family divisions, the difference was stark as to just how little the family division judges seem to know about the law. And I even mentioned in some of my videos that there was almost this attitude that the law either didn't matter or that it got in the way of the best interest of the child, which in my experience of representing myself for 8 years is a completely wrong-headed, baseless, totally off the ranch idea that, I mean, I can't even really speak comprehensively at this approach of, to help the children, we need to break the law on purpose. But that's kind of the impression that you get when you actually look at each of these different judicial departments and the way they're making mistakes all over the place. And having seen the videos of them in action in Nevada, because we have a lot of videos on YouTube of these judges in action, and that's the idea you start to get, is that it's not just an accident, that it's if you try and actually hold them to the law, you must be a bad person. You must be a bad guy. And some of the attorneys even kind of seem to go into this direction, because it's sort of against the unspoken rules to really cite statutes, rules, and case law and try to drive your case in the direction that it needs to go for the, with respect to your client's wishes. A lot of times there are attorneys even who are, they get behind this idea of, let's just sit down and talk to the judge, make a connection, and, get what we want that way instead. So for me to see Judge Judy actually pinpoint specific reasons as to how this is happening, I think one of them, she said, was that there are certain political hacks that are owed some kind of favor, so they're just dropped into the family court system, because if they screw up, no one's going to know because there's no cameras there and nobody files any appeals. To see her say that actually, I think, at least for me, fills in a lot of the blanks. Now, her approach, her solution, is one that I never would have thought of. But having heard it, and it having come from her, I actually now strongly believe that transparency in those types of cases would be a big step in the right direction. And I also have to kind of compare her assertion or her argument in favor of transparency to my argument, which is in favor of appellate scrutiny. She's more pushing in the favor or pushing in the direction of public scrutiny, whereas I'm pushing in the favor of appellate scrutiny. And maybe the solution is really a little bit of both. Maybe public scrutiny and appellate scrutiny combined is the recipe for getting the best possible family division, at least in Nevada, that you can possibly get. So I did mention I was going to kind of compare a few things. A lot of people claim that public scrutiny is bad and that that's why the federal court system is so good. I don't know if it's actually that good. But that because you cannot vote for federal judges, they are appointed and that's it, they're judged for life, there is a better system because they're not bound to the whims of the public. And Judge Judy's approach here is actually very inconsistent with that because she favors cameras in the courtroom, and that is basically sort of implying that if you mess up, the public will find out and they'll vote you out of office. So I think here with these two different arguments, I think you don't have a perfect solution either way. With regards to public scrutiny, you could have situations where public opinion drives a judge in the wrong direction, in a direction that's against the law. And you could also have situations where no public scrutiny at all, which is a full appointment system, allows judges to ignore the law because nobody can do anything about it. Some people will say that if a judge breaks the law on purpose, they'll get impeached, or that the Commission on Judicial Discipline in that particular jurisdiction will do something about it. But my opinion is that impeachment almost never happens. In fact, in Nevada, I don't think we have impeached a judge in the history of Nevada even one time. If somebody in Nevada happens to know of a situation where the legislature impeached a judge even once, definitely send me something in the comments below because I've never seen it happen. I've looked back through the judiciary from now back to 1864 because I have to do that kind of stuff for my website on Nevada judges, and I haven't seen a single impeachment. With regards to the Commission on Judicial Discipline, they do remove some judges, but it's usually the most obvious, the most egregious, the most in-your-face example that you can imagine when it comes to judges who are just making mistakes all over the place, but they're not doing crazy things like sleeping with litigants or defrauding investors or getting convicted of crimes or alcoholism. If they're not doing something in your face, nothing happens to them. Maybe they'll get a reprimand, like a slap on the wrist or a fine or something like that. But when election season comes or election time comes, most people don't even know about any of that kind of stuff going on. And so my opinion is that all appointment systems don't work, not because they are bad at choosing good judges, but because they are bad at removing bad judges. So I favor the election system and I favor public scrutiny over the idea that the public is going to cause more damage than good. As I mentioned earlier, there's no perfect solution. Both of those approaches have issues, but I think the better one is the one that involves public scrutiny. So now I have a very strong opinion that I can extend that principle to domestic relations cases, family court types of cases. I do think that the statutes and the court rules that allow people to make those hearings private should be repealed. So the other thing I was going to go ahead and compare before I ended this video was my approach with the whole appellate scrutiny. I know that a lot of people cannot gain access to an appellate court. They can't afford an appeal or a writ petition. If they're representing themselves, they do not know how to prepare one. And so just as with the other example, my approach, which is appellate scrutiny, isn't a perfect approach either. There's problems on both sides, and I just think that having weighed that appellate scrutiny is the way to go. I think that's going to do more good than any other sort of solution that tries to force the judges to do the right thing without using an appeal. So a lot of times that comes down to filing complaints, like ethics complaints against the judge and stuff like that. I don't think any of those solutions are any better than the appellate solution. In fact, I resolutely stand by appellate scrutiny as a way to keep the judges on the right track. So this is going to be a video where hopefully other people now have a strong opinion about scrutiny in the courtroom, whether it's appellate or whether it's by the public. And I hope that Judge Judy's opinion here really resonated with the rest of you as much as it did with me. So post in the comments below if you have a certain little bit to add or say with regards to that particular interview of Judge Judy. Definitely will be interested in taking a look at what kind of feedback I get. And that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end this video.